Good morning, it's January 20th. This is To My Liberal Friends. If you're seeing this on TikTok, it's because Donald Trump gave them a 90-day reprieve. If you're watching on YouTube, it's where it normally is. And I would recommend anybody watching go to the YouTube version. Well, today Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States and one of only two presidents to win 2 terms that are not consecutive. 4 years earlier, Trump was given up to be politically dead. In today's political world, when an incumbent loses, he's normally put out to pasture and slowly fades from public view. In my lifetime, that's been the case of Jimmy Carter and George H.W. Bush. They were still active in their lives, but politically they became both invisible and non-factors. But as Trump returns to the White House, Democrats are still trying to understand how the man they vilified for 8 years could not only win the Electoral College, but for the first time in 2 decades also win the popular vote as a Republican. They have rationalized the loss in so many ways, it's difficult to enumerate them all. Now, some Harris supporters, especially among the D.C. professional class, attribute Harris' loss to Trump voters' gullibility or malice. They say that America is thriving, crime is down, unemployment is low, and Biden passed major legislation to combat inflation and enhance America's ability to compete with China. They're dreaming. Therefore, only a public that fell for right-wing misinformation or backs Trump's authoritarian dispositions could have elected him president. Among other things, this assessment overlooks that inflation, which surged during Biden's presidency, battered working-class voters that formed the core of Trump's support, and that declining inflation does not mean that prices have returned to pre-inflation levels. It also underestimates the impact of lawless borders on middle-class and working-class voters. It avoids consideration of the consequences of mainstream media gaslighting of Americans about Biden's declining cognitive capabilities. And it ignores the electoral significance of Harris's inability to distinguish herself from the Biden administration, known early on as the Biden-Harris administration, and to separate herself from the hard left position she took in 2019 in pursuit of her party's presidential nomination. Other Harris supporters blame her loss on racism and sexism. They maintain that the American people's bigotry foiled the election of an African-American woman to the highest office in the land. Well-known facts undercut this accusation. In 2008, then Senator Barack Obama defeated John McCain, a center-right white war hero, to become the first black person elected president of the United States. And following his 2009 inauguration, President Obama enjoyed sky-high approval ratings that cut across party lines. In 2012, Obama coasted to re-election against Mitt Romney, another center-right white former businessman and former Massachusetts governor. And former President Obama and his African-American wife, former First Lady Michelle Obama, remained fairly popular. Moreover, though losing to Trump in 2016 in the Electoral College, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, demonstrating that a majority of Americans could prefer a woman in the White House. So much for the racism and sexism. They don't want to admit that the reasons Democrats lost and Trump and the Republicans won are 1, immigration, and 2, policies, and 3, the lies that they were told. There's no doubt that immigration was a bigger issue than Democrats want to believe it was with voters. In a recent poll by the public, by a 55 to 42% margin, they want all illegal immigrants to be removed from the country. That may not be possible, but it should have signaled to Democrats they were on the wrong side of that issue. For 4 years, Biden and Secretary Mayorkas told the American public the border was secure. They expected the public to believe them and not believe their eyes when they watched the media videos of millions of immigrants flooding across the border. The second and major reason for the loss by Harris and Democrats was policy. The Biden administration decided early on during the pandemic they're going to use that as a reason to move massive spending bills. It did not matter if this would balloon the deficit and become a major cause of inflation. Liberals viewed this as an opportunity to move their agenda. Simultaneously, they began a full-throated attack on fossil fuels. The results were gas prices that soared to almost $5 a gallon, a price that remains on the West Coast with their ultra-liberal policies towards energy. But it became more than just energy and inflation. It became their total embrace of social policies that were opposed by the middle class and blue-collar workers. They pushed ESG, environmental social government, policies on corporations. They told everyone that diversity, equity, and inclusion had to be adhered to in the corporate world. Democrats told parents that objected to critical race theory being taught in schools they would be branded as terrorists. In some cases, were arrested. They objected to being told which pronouns to use. For several election cycles, highly educated, prestigiously credentialed elites have alienated middle class and working class voters and driven them to the Republican Party. Over the last 15 years or so, the Great Awakening intensified progressive elites' push of hard left cultural stances. They championed assaults on free speech by the universities, press, social media, government, and sometimes all in tandem. This set the stage for a massive switch in the demographics of both Republican and Democratic voters. Blue-collar workers, once a solid foundation of the Democratic Party, started moving toward Republicans. This was crucial in the swing states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. But if I had to point to one issue that brought down the Democrats, it would have to be the lying done by the administration. It started from the beginning. The price of gasoline was not Biden's fault, it was Trump's fault. Then it was Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and when that did not take, it was the oil companies' greed. On inflation, it was another lie. It was transitory and would go away. But as I said, the enormous government spending bills only fueled the national debt and inflation. The average voter only saw their grocery bill and other bills going up faster than their income. The Hunter Biden laptop lie was just icing on the cake. Secretary Blinken organized 51 intelligence officials to say it was all Russian disinformation. But eventually that lie fell apart when even the most liberal media outlets had to finally admit it was Hunter's laptop. But the biggest lie that brought down Biden, and by default Harris, was that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack and on top of everything. The public knew better because they kept seeing the cognitive decline in their own eyes. Sad to say that the legacy of Joe Biden will be remembered for is the lies he and his fellow Democrats told the public and expected them to believe. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, I recommend going to the YouTube and subscribing.